So for pretest and post-test scores, students are introduced to or take their pretest at the beginning of the semester, and then their post-test is done at the end of the semester. So it's an 18-week difference between the pretest and the post-test. They are considered proficient in those three standards at the end of the semester, so that's why we wait so long for those. In between, obviously, students are introduced to the concepts. Coming into geometry, they have very little geometry knowledge. And so one of the standards that is assessed does have some algebra in it, so they get that one first right away at the beginning of chapter 1 because it does a nice job at going over some of the algebra review and then introducing some of the basic geometry concepts about how do we move a shape and the properties of shapes and what happens when I move a shape. And then students are formally assessed on those as they are gaining their knowledge a couple of times throughout the semester. They also get some informal assessments on those through homework quizzes and in-class activities and things like that. But the instruction piece is kind of the unique part of it, where our curriculum will introduce a concept. So our three main ideas in semester 1 are the movement of shapes, angles and lines, and the angles formed by lines, and intersecting lines, and then basic properties of triangles. And those are basically the first 3 chapters. But again, students might be introduced to that concept, and then really in their homework is where they become the masters of it, because our curriculum doesn't just assign 20 problems and say, here's the concept, now practice it. They do what's called a review preview, and so our homework is spiraling, meaning that they're continuously reviewing the concepts that they have been introduced to. So even though in class we might be learning about triangles, they're still practicing the angle relationships and the transformation of shapes and the movement of shapes, even though we're learning about something else in class. So that's kind of the unique piece about it, is they're always staying up to date on what they have learned, and it's not just I learned it and now it's in the past. Nope, it's always going to come back, and they're always going to have problems from previous chapters that are essential to their learning and to what they're going to be learning. One thing I think I would probably change about our time frame with standards assessments is I would probably give the first 2 standard assessments a little bit earlier than in the final weeks of the semester, because by that point we've moved on to more right triangle specific stuff, so looking at trig ratios and things like that, and put kind of on the back burner those first couple of standards. And so while they've mastered them, with anything, students forget a little bit of what they've learned. And so I think I would give those a little bit sooner, probably around Thanksgiving time, instead of waiting until the end of the semester. I think that would give me a better, more accurate reflection of their learning, instead of making it a pretty big memory recall for a lot of these kids. Other than that, I felt like the pretest and the post-test did an accurate job of showing student growth and where they were really at, considering 18 weeks of learning. So